Michael Thompson, please enter your 2008 rebirth wish list. Wish number 1, bankrupt the gorgeous Olivia Sullivan. Wish number 2, upgrade Olivia Sullivan's super flat chest to aircraft carrier size. Wish number 3, make tons of money and buy Olivia Sullivan's freedom from the Sullivan family. Wish number 10, hope I get a system to help me make money effortlessly. I just want to slack off. January 2008, just after the first snow. The weather today was exceptionally cold. The chill of the melting snow seemed to seep right into your bones. Inside a high school in Green Valley, students were in class. There was no heating in the southern classrooms. Students were bundled up like snowmen, pausing frequently as they wrote to breathe warm air onto their hands and rub them together vigorously. I'll explain this problem one last time. When the x-axis coordinate. At the front of the room, the pot-bellied middle-aged math teacher pointed his teaching stick at the blackboard, spitting slightly as he lectured passionately. Below the podium, in the second-to-last row, a clean-cut boy was staring blankly at a point in midair, his jaw dropped in astonishment. System loading, current progress 99%. The text floated in a bordered box in the upper right corner of his vision, just like movie subtitles. The shock of this inexplicable phenomenon, something that defied all belief and understanding, finally coalesced into 2 words. Holy shit! The sudden shocked outburst instantly jolted his classmates awake. Everyone turned towards the source of the sound. The good-looking boy in the second-to-last row. He had abruptly stood up, his shocked expression quite a sight. Of course, the look the math teacher gave him was also quite something. Michael Thompson, do you have an objection to my explanation of this problem? Michael Thompson remained stunned for a good while before snapping back to reality. Seeing the teacher's face flushed dark red with anger, he finally stammered out after a long pause. Holy, it was a great explanation. Thank you. Now, take your paper, get out, and stand in the hall. You got it. Michael swiftly gathered his papers from the desk and, amidst the roaring laughter of the entire class, dashed out of the classroom. But even standing outside in the hallway as punishment, his mind was still reeling. Oakwood High School. This is my old high school, all right. But I'm in my 30s. Haven't I been out of high school for over a decade? Could it be? I've time traveled. Michael looked down at his hands. The previously injured middle finger on his left hand was now perfectly fine and flexible. The calluses were gone too, his hands pale and smooth like a teenager's. And the system loading text in his vision hadn't disappeared. What the hell is going on? Inside the classroom, a short girl sitting right in the front row, center desk, was slumped over, looking a bit pale and gently rubbing her stomach. Could it be I've time traveled? What year is it? Definitely not 2021. And what the heck is this text? Suddenly, a voice echoed in her mind, making Olivia Sullivan jump. She snapped her head up, looking around in confusion, trying to find whoever had just spoken and startled her. But the surrounding students seemed not to have heard anything, and the teacher carried on with his lecture. The voice had been so loud. Sitting in the front row, she'd heard it clearly. There was no way the teacher hadn't heard it. How could the notoriously short-tempered math teacher ignore a student disrupting the class? Could it be? I misheard. Her deskmate saw Olivia's strange behavior and whispered, Olivia, just hang in there. Class is almost over. No, I don't need to go to the bathroom. Olivia blushed instantly, hastily whispering her explanation. She lowered her head, pretending to be nonchalantly listening and taking notes. Hey, it's healed. It really healed. Holy shit, awesome. The sudden voice startled her again. Just then, her deskmate, Claire Evans, suddenly snickered. She nudged Olivia's elbow and gestured with her chin towards the hallway. Olivia, look. What's Michael Thompson doing? Olivia instinctively glanced towards the classroom door. She saw the clean-cut, handsome boy standing outside, holding up the middle finger of his left hand with a goofy grin on his face. And the direction his finger was pointing was aimed squarely at the math teacher on the podium. His finger was even bending and straightening repeatedly, clearly provocative. Claire and Olivia were in the front row, right below the podium. Their whispering immediately drew the ire of the lecturing math teacher. Just as he was about to reprimand them, he noticed they were both looking outside. He instinctively followed their gaze and saw Michael Thompson giving him the middle finger from the classroom doorway. Math teacher. He tossed his notes onto the desk. Class, review the next problems yourselves. Michael Thompson, get over here. Tell me what your problem is. What the F? Teacher, that's not what I meant. Let me explain. The classroom erupted in laughter, and Olivia's deskmate Claire Evans was laughing so hard she clutched her stomach, honking like a goose. But Olivia couldn't laugh. She looked at Michael Thompson, who was now getting chewed out with his head down, with absolute astonishment. That voice just now came from Michael Thompson. Claire, did you hear what Michael Thompson said just now? Yeah, he said, "Teacher, let me explain." Claire guffawed, sounding like a goose again. Clearly, she hadn't heard what Olivia had heard. Since class was still in session, the math teacher just gave Michael a stern lecture, told him to come to his office after class, and went back to teaching. But Olivia couldn't focus on the lecture anymore. Her eyes kept darting towards Michael Thompson standing by the door. Inadvertently, their eyes met. Why does Gorgeous keep looking at me? Did she already recognize the charm of her future husband? No, wait, didn't we only start dating in college? I knew it. I always said she had a secret crush on me in high school, but she'd never admit it. Future husband. Olivia's eyes widened, and her face flushed crimson. This guy, what on earth? What nonsense is he spouting? But this time, she noticed Michael definitely hadn't opened his mouth, which meant she was hearing Michael Thompson's thoughts. She's still looking? This damn irresistible charm of mine. That shameless guy. Olivia snapped her head back, annoyed, and started scribbling furiously in her notebook. But Michael's thoughts continued to echo in her mind. Since I've been reborn, should I get together with Gorgeous now? Or stick to the original timeline and wait until college? His thoughts sounded hesitant. The question made Olivia instinctively prick up her ears. But ultimately, she heard Michael's resigned thoughts. Forget it. Better not change the original timeline. Besides, Gorgeous is so strict with me after we get married. I can't even visit the massage parlors. I should enjoy my freedom for a while first. Get back to being the bathhouse king. I wonder if girl number 13 at that house of pleasure near the university town is working yet. Snap! From gripping it too hard, the tip of the ballpoint pen Olivia was holding snapped, and ink leaked out, staining the notebook page black. For some reason, she was starting to feel really angry. Claire Evans heard the commotion and glanced curiously at her deskmate. That's when she saw the usually quiet and gentle Olivia Sullivan gritting her teeth, her face contorted with fury. The small hand gripping her pen trembled slightly, the nib snapping under the pressure. Ink bled onto her notes, staining a dark patch. Who managed to get our resident angel this worked up? Claire wondered. Olivia Sullivan sensed her deskmate's strange gaze and immediately smoothed her expression, pretending nonchalantly to take out a new pen cartridge from her pencil case. Inside, however, she couldn't stop fuming. What kind of nonsense is this guy spouting? How could I possibly marry him in the future? Olivia was furious. She'd had a strict upbringing. Although she was beautiful and even the campus belle of Oakwood High School, her dating experience was zero. Now, out of the blue, someone pops up claiming to be her future husband, who time traveled back. How could something so ridiculous happen in this world? This was the 21st century. One had to believe in science. Although the fact that she could eavesdrop on Michael Thompson's thoughts wasn't exactly scientific itself. Getting angry made the cramps in her lower abdomen worse. It was that time of the month, and perhaps due to her constitution, it was always excruciatingly painful. Olivia's brows furrowed tightly as she clutched her stomach and laid her head down on the desk. This scene didn't escape Michael Thompson, who was standing outside the classroom as punishment. Gorgeous has that look on her face. Is it that time of the month? So, it hurt this badly even back in high school, huh? It didn't get better until after we were married and had Lucas. Back when we were dating, she always needed me to rub her stomach around this time, or she couldn't sleep. Hearing the buzzing voice in her head, Olivia's eyebrows twitched uncontrollably. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, she slammed her hand on the desk, jumped up, and shouted towards the classroom door, flushing with anger and embarrassment. "Can you please stop saying such embarrassing things?" Even a girl usually as meek as a bunny rabbit has a few days each month when she can become terrifying. Her outburst silenced the classroom instantly. All the students stared in astonishment at Olivia Sullivan, who had suddenly shot to her feet. The math teacher, grabbing his pointer stick, headed for the door. Michael Thompson, standing out here as punishment and still harassing female classmates. Are you? Michael Thompson, standing outside, was completely dumbfounded. How did this involve him? No, teacher, I didn't say anything. I really didn't say anything just now. What rotten luck. During the lunch break, Michael Thompson returned to the classroom mentally and physically exhausted after a visit to the homeroom teacher's office. He slumped onto his desk, cursing his misfortune under his breath. For disrupting class order and harassing a female student, he'd been warned by the homeroom teacher to have his parents come in tomorrow. The thought of going home and explaining this a man almost 30 in reality, and then having to endure a beatdown for both his mom and dad? How humiliating could that be? So lame. Michael rested his head on the desk. The words system loading were still visible in his field of vision, but after pondering for a while, he couldn't make heads or tails of it, so he decided to ignore it. Since something as outrageous as rebirth had already happened, what else couldn't he accept? However, the thought of seeing his mom and dad again stirred a strange feeling inside him. His nose tingled slightly. Michael Thompson's family wasn't fabulously wealthy, but they weren't poor either. His father was a craftsman, a carver, and his mother was a typical housewife. Unfortunately, because his father never wore a mask while working, constantly inhaling dust, he developed lung disease and passed away while Michael was in college. His mother, who had always been very close to his father, lost her pillar of strength, and her health declined steadily in the following years. Now that he was reborn, even if he couldn't convince his dad to change jobs, he had to at least make him take precautions, wear a mask while working, and definitely make him quit smoking. Since I've been reborn, I have to make sure my family lives a good life. Before his rebirth, Michael Thompson had been incredibly successful in his career, earning more money than most people could in several lifetimes. But while he had earned enough money, in the end, he didn't know who he was earning it for. For himself, he already had enough to retire at 30. For his family, after his father died, his mother stayed in their old house back home. Even when Michael wanted to bring her to live in comfort, she refused time and again. Yet he felt like he couldn't stop. Countless eyes were watching him, countless voices urging him forward. How many people were depending on him for money, like baby birds waiting to be fed? That life was exhausting. So exhausting that when he came home at night, he didn't even have the energy to look at the woman he loved most, just collapsed into bed. The next morning, he would invariably be woken by calls from the company, hastily changing clothes for another frantic day. So this time, reborn, Michael Thompson didn't want to be so tired anymore. He just wanted to relax comfortably, do things he enjoyed, and spend more time with the girl he loved and his family. Easier said than done, though. Getting gorgeous ransomed from the Sullivan family and marrying her is going to be pretty damn difficult. Michael felt a headache coming on just thinking about it. In his past life, he was a poor kid who started from scratch, and Olivia had suffered a lot because of it. Now that he had a second chance, knowing what hardships his future wife would face, he couldn't just stand by and watch, could he? It pained him to think about it. So, this life, even if he didn't want to make big money, he had to get his hands on a sum, a quite substantial sum, before graduating college. It was the necessary ransom to whisk Olivia Sullivan away from the Sullivan family. Calling it a bride price wouldn't be wrong either. It's 2008 now. Delivery platforms have just been established. E-commerce is budding. Smartphones are just starting to become popular. The 4G era won't start until 2013, and the concept of Bitcoin won't even be introduced until the end of this year. There are plenty of opportunities, but for someone in the arts like me, venturing into these fields is a bit of a leap. Maybe I should stick to my old line of work. But where will the capital come from? Ultimately, he was still a high school student. No bank would lend him money. Ask his family? He'd get his legs broken for sure. But he couldn't possibly wait until after college graduation, accumulate some assets, and then start a business, right? Michael's gaze suddenly fell on Olivia Sullivan, sitting at the front of his row. A thought struck him. Speaking of which, gorgeous is loaded. I remember her mom bought her a school district apartment back in high school. She probably had at least 7 figures in her own bank account back then. She'd brag about it to me after we got married. Maybe I can get some startup fund from her first. It's technically earning her bride price money, right? While Michael Thompson was lost in these thoughts, Olivia Sullivan, sitting at the front of his row and pretending to be asleep on her desk, was secretly listening to his inner monologue. Olivia's eyes gradually widened. This guy is actually scheming to get his hands on her secret stash. Olivia Sullivan pretended to be napping at her desk, but she was secretly listening in on Michael Thompson's thoughts. They sat in the same column of desks, but she was in the front row, and he was in the second to last. The distance, combined with the chatter during the lunch break, made it hard for her to hear everything clearly. Still, Olivia Sullivan caught phrases like 4G era, internet economy, and Bitcoin. She was completely baffled. What on earth were those things? She never heard of them. She had heard of smartphones, though, and even owned one her dad bought her last Christmas. It was huge, like a brick, and inconvenient to carry, so she never brought it to school, sticking with her small flip phone instead. Besides, most students at school didn't have cell phones at all. Owning a flip phone already made her the envy of many. Claire Evans was always borrowing it to level up on Messenger. When she heard Michael Thompson thinking about hitting her up for startup capital, the look on her face was priceless. That shameless jerk, thinking he can use my Christmas savings? Tooey. But how does he know I have 7 figures in my account? She hadn't even told her best friend, Claire Evans. Could he really be? No, impossible. There's no way I'd ever marry someone like him. Speaking of which, they're going to redevelop the old district in Green Valley in 3 years. Buying land there now? Nah, it's too early. I'll think about it when I have more cash. Right now, the main thing is figuring out how to convince Miss Pretty here to make a necessary investment in her future husband. Michael Thompson, sitting near the back, seemed to hit on an idea. He stood up excitedly and headed towards Olivia Sullivan. Hey, Olivia Sullivan. Olivia Sullivan replied stonily, Get lost. Right then. Guess that was too blunt, Michael thought. Were Miss Pretty and I on bad terms back in high school? I don't really remember interacting with her much. After school, Olivia Sullivan was quietly packing her bag at her desk. Michael Thompson hadn't left the classroom either. He sat at his desk, looking troubled. That guy, still after her savings. Olivia Sullivan fumed silently. She finished packing and got ready to leave. Just as she reached the classroom door, Michael Thompson's thoughts echoed in her mind again. Oh, right, today's January 4th. Doesn't that mean Miss Pretty's grandpa has a sudden heart attack and dies tomorrow? I think it happened while he was out for a walk. If someone had found him right away, maybe he wouldn't have died. I never really knew the old guy. But after her grandfather died, things seemed rough for Miss Pretty with the Sullivan family. Should I warn her? What excuse could I use? Olivia Sullivan's eyes widened, her pupils contracting sharply. Grandpa is going to die tomorrow? Yeah, I should give Miss Pretty a heads up, Michael decided. He stood up, planning to find a subtle way to warn Olivia Sullivan. But when he turned to look for her, her seat was empty. She'd already left. Michael Thompson scratched his head, frustrated. When did she leave? Oh well, I'll just message her on Messenger when I get home. He didn't have a cell phone back in high school, but his uncle next door had a computer he could easily borrow. Michael Thompson gathered his things and left the school, heading home. Oakwood High School was located in Pine Ridge County, part of the Green Valley area. Michael Thompson didn't live in the main county seat, but in a smaller town under its jurisdiction, the curiously named Pine Creek Town. Pine Creek Town wasn't far from the county center. The bus from the school plaza got him home in about 15 minutes. The Green Valley area was known for its rolling hills, with low mountains and terraced fields being common sights. Michael Thompson's family lived halfway up a hillside, accessible via a hiking trail. Behind their house was a bamboo grove, and next door stood a church. His family lived in 2 connected houses they'd built themselves, sharing a large yard. It wasn't just his immediate family. His grandparents and 4 uncles lived there too. They were all so close. As a child, Michael felt like he had several dads and moms. But after his father passed away, Michael went off to college and rarely came back except for Christmas. Eventually, his aunts and uncles bought their own places in the city and moved out too. He no longer woke up on weekend mornings to the sound of hymns from the church next door, grumbling as he got out of bed. Lost in these bittersweet memories, Michael Thompson slid open the iron gate and stepped into the yard. Just inside, he saw his uncle Ben Thompson squatting on the steps eating from a bowl. Seeing Michael, Benjamin grinned. Mikey, heard her teacher called the house. Come to hide out at your uncle's. Uncle Ben, are you just squatting out here with your dinner, waiting to watch the show? Your aunt's just dishing up mine. She'll be out in a sec, Uncle Ben replied. Michael, half annoyed and half amused, unlocked his front door and went inside, muttering, Mom only has one son. She dotes on me, right? No way she'd actually hit me, seriously. Benjamin Thompson just grinned without saying anything, watching his nephew disappear inside. A moment later, Michael's voice, trying to sound tough but clearly fearful, drifted from the house. Margaret Thompson, what is this behavior? Is this how you treat a flower of our nation, the future of our country? Put the stick down and let's talk properly. You brat, gotten bold, have you? Flirting with girls at school now. Oh, you're something else. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I'll be letting everyone down. What followed was a commotion, the sound of chase and things getting knocked over. Outside, several aunts and uncles had gathered, bowls in hand, craning their necks to watch the drama unfold. Later, at dinner time, Robert Thompson returned home from his workshop. Before he could even change his slippers, Michael stomped over, looking furious. Dad, someone hit your son. Aren't you going to do something about it? Robert Thompson's eyes widened. Who hit you? I'll go beat up their kid. Never mind. Forget I said anything. Michael retreated quickly. Robert Thompson changed his slippers and went inside, chuckling. So, what trouble did you get into this time to make your mom mad? Michael avoided his father's gaze, tried to look nonchalant. What trouble? Nothing. Before he could finish, Margaret Thompson emerged from the kitchen, apron on and spatula still in hand. Your son, she said irritably, has really gotten bold. He's flirting with girls at school now. Margaret Thompson said this, hoping her husband would back her up and lecture their hopeless son. But Robert Thompson, instead of getting angry, just teased him. Fallen in love? Need some cash from Dad. Thanks for the financial support, Dad. Michael Thompson immediately grinned cheekily. How much can you give me? Margaret Thompson's face immediately darkened. She unleashed a tirade. Give you jack squat. Get lost. And you, Uncle Ben Thompson, hiding a secret stash of cash, are you? Come here, you've got some explaining to do. Seeing his dad had drawn her fire, Michael Thompson wisely retreated from the battlefield. Mom, I'm going back to my room to study. Call me when dinner's ready. Get lost. I'm sick of looking at the both of you. You got it. Michael Thompson's room was on the second floor. His parents' bedroom was the sunny one at the front, while his room was at the back. His room wasn't exactly small, but for some reason his parents had gotten him a massive double bed. As a result, once the bed was crammed in, there wasn't even room for a desk. He had to get a small, low table to put on the bed, folding it up and stashing it underneath when it was time to sleep. He lay on his bed for a bit, glancing at the black frame in his field of vision. It still read system initializing, stuck at 99%. No change at all. Had crashed? There wasn't exactly any customer support. Michael Thompson felt like leaving a one-star review and demanding a refund. But unfortunately, he couldn't find a complaint hotline. He just closed his eyes and decided to ignore it. He closed his eyes, listening to the rustling sound of the bamboo grove outside. A sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time washed over him. What a mess today has been. I was actually pretty emotional seeing Mom and Dad earlier. When Michael Thompson had first seen Margaret Thompson, his eyes had welled up. His mom back then was still so substantial. Margaret Thompson was quite plump back then. She probably would have broken a bathroom scale. When she laughed hard, her eyes would disappear into the folds of her cheeks. It was only after his father passed away that she gradually withered, her once passionate, fiery personality becoming withdrawn and quiet. Whenever she called him, she'd be so careful, terrified of bothering him, which had always left the Michael Thompson of his past life feeling awful. But the mom standing before him now was the one he remembered so vividly. Michael Thompson had wanted to rush over and give her a huge bear hug, but Margaret Thompson's feather duster had sent him retreating. Any urge he'd felt to cry vanished instantly. A guy who was technically almost 30 getting chewed out by his mom. It was downright humiliating, especially with all the gossiping aunts and uncles watching from the doorway. It's all that pretty girl's fault. She was the one sneaking glances at me in class, and then she turned it all around. Michael Thompson muttered under his breath. But thinking of Olivia Sullivan reminded him he'd planned to warn her about what would happen with her grandfather tomorrow. He sighed and dragged himself out of bed, muttering, well, she is my future wife, after all. Michael Thompson's family didn't own a computer, but his uncle's family did. There was a balcony outside his parents' room, and it connected directly to his uncle's house next door, with no dividing wall. He walked across the balcony to his uncle's door and knocked. Knock, knock, knock. A moment later, the door opened, and a girl around Michael Thompson's age stepped out. Her name was Emily Thompson, his uncle's oldest daughter, about 6 months older than Michael. They were the closest among all the cousins in the extended family. After all, they'd been in the same class since kindergarten, and even though they weren't later on, they still went to the same school. The moment Emily Thompson saw Michael Thompson, she grinned. Mikey, heard Aunt Maggie gave you a beating? Michael Thompson's face instantly darkened. Don't bring that up. Move. I need to use the computer. Demanding to use my computer and acting all tough? Believe it or not, I ought to give you a... Emily Thompson abruptly stopped talking when she spotted the 10-yuan bill pinched between Michael Thompson's fingers. Her attitude did a complete 180. Snatching the bill, she beamed, her eyes crinkling into crescents. One VIP coming through. Right this way, sir. Please watch your step. Figures. She'd always been money-grubbing, even as a kid. That hadn't changed a bit. Michael Thompson went inside, and Emily Thompson even graciously poured him a glass of water. Back in '08, most computers were still desktops. Even though slimmer flat-screen monitors were starting to come out, Emily Thompson's wasn't one of them. It was a couple of years old, after all. As Michael Thompson was booting up the computer, his little cousin, still in kindergarten, toddled over dragging a teddy bear and tapped him on the arm. Michael Thompson looked down at her. His little cousin tilted her head back, looking up at him, and said in a soft little voice, Mikey, Mommy and Daddy said Aunt Maggie hit you cause you were acting like a hooligan. Where did she hit you? Michael Thompson was speechless. Great. So the whole extended family knew his mom had laid into him today, huh? He shot a look at Emily Thompson, who quickly turned her head away, obviously trying hard not to laugh. His little cousin tugged his sleeve again. Mikey, what's acting like a hooligan? Michael Thompson scooped her up, planted a loud mwah on her cheek, and pinched her little nose. That's acting like a hooligan, you little goofball. The little girl giggled, hopped down, and scampered happily out of the room, shouting, I'm going to tell Mommy and Daddy that Mikey acted like a hooligan to me, too. Wait, get back here. After finally bribing his little cousin with the promise of a lollipop tomorrow, Michael Thompson sat back down in front of the computer. The ancient machine had only just finished booting up. Michael Thompson looked at the default Windows interface and the dated icons for the installed software, feeling a bit disoriented. He opened Messenger, but when he tried to log in, he got a password error. That can't be right. I definitely kept using my high school Messenger account. What was my password back then? He hesitated for a while and tried a few more times, but kept saying the password was wrong. Emily Thompson, standing nearby, couldn't watch anymore. What are you doing? Can't you even remember your own password? Scoot over, let me do it. She expertly tapped a few keys and Messenger logged right in. Michael Thompson stared at her, astonished. How did you know my password? Are you dense? Weren't you constantly asking me to keep your Messenger logged in for you? Come to think of it, back then people really did care about their Messenger level. Kids in class used to compete over who had the highest rank. If anyone went to an internet cafe, they were guaranteed to be begged by a crowd to keep their accounts logged in. That was probably the reason Emily Thompson had pestered her dad relentlessly until he bought her a computer. She'd even spent a fair bit of money on those customizable avatars, too. It seemed pretty ridiculous to Michael Thompson now, but it had been completely normal back then. Michael Thompson got on a Messenger and quickly saw his own screen name. TH3 love you to know. Michael Thompson. I actually had a phase like this. Michael Thompson immediately rushed to change his Messenger name to something very generic. Emily Thompson leaned over his shoulder to look, then said disdainfully, Are you always this lame? The crown of nobility is too heavy. Sorry, I'm not worthy. Michael Thompson couldn't explain it to Emily, so he just silently opened Messenger and found Olivia Sullivan in the class group chat. Although he and the beautiful Olivia had been in the same class in high school, they didn't know each other well, barely exchanging a few words throughout their time there, let alone adding each other on Messenger. Michael Thompson started typing a message to Olivia Sullivan. Hey Olivia Sullivan, I heard your grandpa's heart isn't doing too well. As he typed, he suddenly thought this might not be the best approach. He and Olivia weren't close right now. If he suddenly said something like this, she might not believe him and might even suspect he was just trying to hit on her. Got it. Michael Thompson had an idea. He deleted everything in the input field and started typing again. Meanwhile, in a villa in the South Villa district of Green Valley, Olivia Sullivan returned home. As soon as she walked in, she saw her mother arguing with her aunt. I'm just asking, why should the shop on Long Street go to your family? Then take it up with Dad. It was his decision. What can you do? Who knows what nonsense you fed Dad? Anyway, just get out of here. I've already arranged for someone to open a clothing store in that shop. Let me tell you, no. Wait. The household staff didn't dare intervene, only watching timidly from the side. In the living room, several cousins sat together, each engrossed in their phones or game consoles, ignoring the argument completely without any interaction among themselves. I'm home, she said softly, but no one responded. Even her mother, still arguing with her aunt, didn't glance at her daughter. Olivia Sullivan silently changed her shoes, walked into the living room, and headed upstairs with her backpack. She was used to it. Despite the opulent house, despite quite a few people being home, it felt exceptionally cold. Olivia Sullivan's room was spacious. Pink wallpaper covered the walls, a wool rug lay on the smooth birch floor, and a neat row of plush toys sat on the bed. It had a very feminine touch. Of course, there was also a computer. It was new, replaced just last month, a gift her father bought her while on a business trip. Olivia Sullivan dropped her backpack and flopped onto the bed, burying her face in the soft quilt, not wanting to move an inch. But as soon as she closed her eyes, a boy's handsome face filled her mind, Michael Thompson. Before today, Olivia Sullivan and Michael Thompson hadn't had much interaction, even though they had been classmates for over 2 years. But what happened today was something she couldn't get off her mind. Why? Why could she suddenly hear Michael Thompson's thoughts? And was he really her future? Impossible, 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 impossible. Olivia Sullivan shuddered, muttering the word repeatedly. Yet, she couldn't help but wonder. If this Michael Thompson from the future had nothing to do with her, how did he know so much about her? He clearly remembered her menstrual cycle and knew she felt particularly unwell during that time. He knew about her secret stash of money, even roughly how much was in it, something only she and her mother knew, not even her father. And he spoke so seriously about the names of their future children. None of it sounded made up. but he said he would take me away from this family. Olivia Sullivan hugged her quilt, whispering the words softly to herself, her gaze becoming distant as she drifted off in thought. After a while, she seemed to snap back to reality. Thinking about what she'd just said, a wave of shyness and embarrassment washed over her. Her face turned red, bit by bit. Even the tips of her ears felt hot. She buried her head under the quilt, letting out a muffled MMPH sound. Today, she must have had a fever. Her brain must be fried. Just supposing, if Michael Thompson's thoughts weren't my imagination, and he wasn't lying, then Grandpa really will be in trouble tomorrow. Olivia Sullivan decided she had to stay home tomorrow no matter what, to look after her grandfather. If what Michael said happened tomorrow, it would prove that hearing his thoughts wasn't just her imagination, and that Michael wasn't lying. Of course, the main reason was that she didn't want anything to happen to her grandfather. He was the only one in the family who was genuinely good to her. Olivia Sullivan's thoughts grew heavy. She took a deep breath to calm herself, then got off the bed and walked towards the computer desk. Sitting down, she turned on the computer, her first action to expertly log into Messenger. Just as Olivia was about to open a web browser, her Messenger icon started bouncing. Someone had sent her a message. Who is this? Olivia Sullivan frowned slightly, looking at the ID. Babe, I got in 4-drip today. She didn't remember adding a friend with such an ID. However, besides family, her friend list only contained classmates. She hadn't added any strangers. So, she clicked open the chat window. Hey Olivia Sullivan, are you free tomorrow afternoon? Let's meet up, okay? I have something really important to discuss with you. Olivia Sullivan stared at the sender's profile picture for a long moment, then suddenly remembered. It was Michael Thompson. Why was he asking her out? That tone, that suggestive wording. Olivia recalled the thoughts she'd heard from Michael during the day. Is he going to confess? She stared wide-eyed at the computer screen for a long moment, her face gradually turning pink. She felt a sudden, unexpected nervousness. 2 p.m. tomorrow, pavilion in the park outside your place. See you there. Olivia Sullivan looked at the message Michael had sent, hesitated for a long moment, then finally replied. What's it about? But she waited for a while without a response. Looking again, his profile picture had grayed out, showing he was offline. That guy. Olivia puffed out her cheeks angrily. But thinking about tomorrow, her eyebrows practically knitted together in worry. Should she go meet him? Olivia kind of wanted to see Michael Thompson, but she was also worried about what she would do if he really confessed his feelings to her. Reject him, definitely reject him. She wasn't that kind of easy girl. After wrestling with the decision, Olivia Sullivan clenched her small fists, making up her mind. She sat at the computer desk, troubled. When she came back to herself, she realized her mind was completely filled with thoughts of Michael Thompson. She'd been agonizing over it for almost half an hour. But a knock on the door pulled her back to reality. The blush gradually faded from her cheeks. Olivia sighed softly, knowing it was someone from the family telling her to come downstairs for dinner. Time for the part of the day she disliked the most. Ow! Hurts! Aunt Maggie, let go. Fatty, is that what you call me? You disrespectful brat. Margaret Thompson scowled, grabbed Michael Thompson by the ear, hauled him up from the computer desk, and scolded. The minute you get back, you run over to your uncle's place to play on the computer. Did you write that apology letter your teacher assigned? Did you do your homework? Finals are almost here. Have you even started studying? Tomorrow's the weekend. No rush. Enough excuses. Get downstairs for dinner right now, or you can eat with Buddy. Buddy was the family dog, nothing fancy. Technically a Chinese rural dog, but mostly just called Mutt. After all, in a small place like Pine Creek Town, which wasn't much different from the countryside, keeping a dog for guarding the house was perfectly normal. With his ear still firmly held, Michael Thompson had no choice but to log out of his messenger and follow Margaret Thompson. Before he left, he saw that little brat Emily Thompson holding their younger cousin. Not only had she done nothing to help him, but she was now holding up the baby cousin's hand, waving it at him. Grinning, she drawled in a mock formal tone, "Valued customer, please come again." The little cousin piped up in her baby voice, "Please come again." Michael Thompson secretly flipped her off, but Margaret Thompson saw the move. The hand gripping his ear gave it a sharp twist, and with a yelp, he stumbled out of his uncle's house, crying "Ow!" Downstairs, his dad, Robert Thompson, was holding a small cup of white liquor, humming a little tune to himself. In front of him were just 2 small dishes, a plate of peanuts and some smashed cucumber salad. Michael Thompson saw this and immediately protested. "Dad, what's wrong with you? Your wife Margaret Thompson is treating us like rabbits, not letting us have any meat. Can't you get her under control?" Slightly tipsy, Robert Thompson squinted at his son. "Don't talk to me. That woman only cares about her precious son, doesn't give a damn about her husband. Michael Thompson. Just then, Margaret Thompson emerged from the kitchen carrying a bowl, scolding as she walked to the table. Eat, eat, eat. Is that all you think about? Such ambition. Still asking for meat? Why don't you go to the pig farm and bite a chunk out of pig's backside? That'd be fresh. How about I give you a smack instead? You want that? Despite her ranting, she placed the bowl she was carrying onto the table. In the bowl, glistening with oil on a soy sauce broth, were 7 or 8 small chicken drumettes and several large, thin slices of pork belly. It was Michael Thompson's favorite dish from childhood. His mother would wash the chicken drumettes and pork belly, put them in a small bowl with some cooking wine and soy sauce for seasoning, and simply place the bowl in a rice cooker while the rice steamed. When the rice was done, the bowl would be lifted out, releasing an incredible aroma. The pork belly melted in your mouth, and the chicken was so tender it fell right off the bone. Seeing the bowl of meat, Michael Thompson's eyes instantly welled up. He hadn't eaten his mom's special chicken and pork belly since he'd left for college. Robert Thompson had been sitting there drinking for ages, but Margaret Thompson hadn't brought out this particular dish. It was obvious who she'd been saving it for. No wonder his dad was complaining. I'll get the rice. Afraid his parents would see his reaction and feeling embarrassed, Michael Thompson quickly got up and went into the kitchen. When he came back out carrying bowls of rice, he stopped in shock. Several of his younger cousins were sprawled in the chairs, each greedily munching on a chicken drumette. He looked back at the serving bowl. Nothing was left but a few slices of the fatty pork belly. Michael Thompson flared up. Hey, what do you think you're doing? My mom made that for me. As he rushed over, the cousins giggled and scattered. His third uncle's youngest boy held up his drumette triumphantly and yelled, Aunt Maggie said not to save any for you. She said we should eat it all. Michael Thompson whipped his head around to face Margaret Thompson. Mom! Margaret Thompson was holding his little baby cousin, wiping her nose. Didn't I leave you a couple of slices? There's still broth left. Just pour it over your rice. Michael Thompson. Damn it. So much for feeling touched. Meanwhile, at the Sullivan residence, the Sullivan family was also gathered for dinner, the large group filling the long table. It was a long table, laden with a sumptuous spread of chicken, duck, fish, and other meats. However, the atmosphere at the table was subdued, filled only with the sounds of slow chewing and the occasional clink of cutlery against plates. Occasionally, a parent might begin to scold a picky child, but a sharp cough from the head of the table would quickly cut them off, making them shut their mouths resentfully. The cough came from the family patriarch, the head of the Sullivan clan, Arthur Sullivan. Olivia Sullivan sat among them, her posture perfect, delicately picking at her rice with chopsticks, taking tiny bites. Across from her sat her mother and her aunt, the same two women who had been practically at each other's throats just moments earlier. Though they'd looked ready to tear each other's hair out moments ago, they now sat eating as if nothing were amiss, occasionally even pouring wine for one another, projecting an image of perfect harmony between sisters-in-law. They hadn't forgotten their argument. They simply didn't dare let it show in front of the patriarch. The family's men were all dressed formally in suits. Phones buzzed intermittently. Some men glanced at their screens before switching them off, their faces impassive. Others frowned, excused themselves, and stepped outside to take the call. It was a grand dinner, yet the atmosphere felt stiflingly somber. At the head of the table, Arthur Sullivan held his chopsticks poised over the feast of delicacies, but seemed hesitant to begin eating. He looked out at his full house of descendants, but felt a distinct lack of satisfaction. Throughout Green Valley, the Sullivan family was, without question, the wealthiest, and the family's fortune had begun with the current patriarch, Arthur Sullivan himself. Tracing Arthur Sullivan's lineage back, his ancestors, all the way to the late Qing dynasty, were simple farmers. His own family wasn't wealthy when he was young. There were 3 brothers and 2 sisters. 2 of his brothers died young, and both sisters were given away to other families to raise. Only he, the youngest, and his eldest brother remained, a stark testament to the family's poverty. But Arthur Sullivan wasn't content with that life. He soon put down his farming tools and started looking for other ways to make a living. Initially, he became a dowyi, a speculative trader, hopping freight trains, taking goods from the south to sell up north, and bringing northern specialties back down south. Back in the 1960s, this was considered speculation and profiteering, and it was illegal. But Arthur Sullivan wasn't afraid of prison. He was afraid of being poor. He was terrified his own children might die from illness because he lacked money for medicine, like his lost brothers, or that he might have to give away his daughters because he couldn't feed them, like his sisters. He worked as a trader for 7 or 8 years. Just as everyone else was jumping into that game, he quit and returned to his hometown to start dealing in small consumer goods. His home region was poor in those days. Because of the terrain, there was very little land suitable for farming. So many locals had secretly emigrated abroad to find work. Arthur Sullivan, however, stayed behind and arguably did a good thing. He organized the remaining townspeople, setting up small workshops to produce toys, clothes, and various everyday items. Leveraging the network he'd built during his years as a trader, he wholesaled these products to other merchants, generating substantial income for a time. Later, the Sullivan business expanded steadily. Benefiting from their location near Newport Coast, they began exporting their goods. Almost imperceptibly, the once penniless young man had built a commercial empire from nothing. But success in business did not necessarily mean success at home. Even heroes face their twilight years. Arthur Sullivan was already nearly 70. Perhaps because he'd pushed himself too hard when he was younger. Now that he was old, all sorts of health problems were surfacing. A few days ago, the doctor had found something wrong with his heart and said he needed to be hospitalized for observation. Arthur Sullivan hadn't listened. He hated hospitals. The moment he stepped inside, seeing the stark white walls and smelling the sharp scent of disinfectant, he always felt like his days were numbered. The Sullivan family dinner didn't end until 7. The children had already left the table, but the adults lingered, chatting with wine glasses in hand. It was a Sullivan family rule, no talking during meals. So, while everyone had eaten in silence, conversation flowed freely now that the meal was over. "Dad, I heard you went to the hospital a couple of days ago. Is everything all right?" His second son's wife eagerly poured him a glass of wine, asking with a solicitous smile. Arthur Sullivan said flatly, "It's nothing serious. The doctor just told me to drink less." His daughter-in-law's smile froze. She awkwardly held the wine bottle, unsure whether to pour more or put it down, finally setting it aside with a sheepish laugh. Just then, the third son's wife gave her own son, who had just finished college, a meaningful look. He immediately understood and stood up, smiling. "Grandpa, I'll be graduating next year. For my internship this year, I was hoping I could help out with the family business." The third son's wife quickly added, "Yes, Dad. Our son isn't a kid anymore. Isn't it time he was given a shop to manage? Just to let him gain some experience." The second son's wife scoffed audibly. "Do technical college students even need internships?" The third son's wife immediately bristled. "Second sister-in-law, how can you say that? Isn't technical college still college? He's your nephew too. If you want to help him, fine, but why make sarcastic remarks?" The tension was palpable. Meanwhile, the second and third sons ignored their wives' argument, absorbed in their own conversation about business. "How's the shop in the old district? What can you do? There's hardly any foot traffic. It's basically a warehouse. I'm planning to sell it off soon, already talking to potential buyers." "You got it good, second brother. Dad gave your family all the shops on Long Street to manage." "Huh, it's just business as usual." Listening to his family members chat, each with their own hidden agendas, Arthur Sullivan felt incredibly irritated. Everything they said, directly or indirectly, revolved around money. Especially since his health had been declining over the past couple of years, these vultures were like flies drawn to rotting meat, afraid they'd arrive too late to get their share. They'd show up at the old house for dinner every few days, the whole clan. Wonderful, truly wonderful. So filial. Arthur Sullivan understood, but he didn't want to. His gaze soon fell on a girl sitting at the corner of the table, and his expression softened considerably. He asked gently, "Olivia Sullivan, you're a junior in high school now, aren't you? How are your grades?" Olivia Sullivan had been sitting silently, not wanting to stay after dinner watching the adults scheme and bicker. It was pure torture for her. Besides, she was on her period today, and her stomach really hurt. But she couldn't leave. Her mother had explicitly told her to stay with her grandfather and not leave his side. When she was suddenly addressed, she didn't react at first, until her mother gently kicked her under the table and shot her a displeased look. Olivia Sullivan finally snapped back. "They're good, Grandpa." Olivia Sullivan's mother chimed in enthusiastically. "Dad, you won't believe it. Olivia was first in her class on the last monthly exam. If she keeps this up, maybe next year's valedictorian at Green Valley High could come from our family." Arthur Sullivan said with satisfaction, "That's good. That's very good." Ever since she was little, Olivia Sullivan had been Arthur Sullivan's favorite granddaughter. There were many grandchildren, but while one or two were cute as children, they all became rebellious as they grew older. None of them excelled academically, but they were masters at causing trouble. Arthur Sullivan often reflected, wondering if he had focused too much on making money in his early years and neglected his children's upbringing, and now the younger generation, raised by those same children, were turning out similarly. But his second son's daughter was different. She had been adorable since she was a child, like a little porcelain doll, and grew up to be quiet and sensible. Her grades were good, she never caused trouble, and she was the only one in the family with a real chance of getting into a top university. Naturally, the old man held her in high regard. Olivia Sullivan looked at the old man, a complicated feeling stirring within her. Grandpa, will he really have a sudden heart attack tomorrow? She still couldn't quite believe the thoughts she'd overheard from Michael Thompson, just like she couldn't believe Michael Thompson was her future husband. Or rather, she didn't want to believe it. But what if? Whether it's true or not, I have to be by Grandpa's side tomorrow. Olivia Sullivan clenched her small fists, making a silent resolve. Later that evening, Michael Thompson was sitting in the first-floor living room, watching TV. Although right now, only boring commercials were playing. Michael Thompson didn't change the channel. His mind wasn't on the television. He was seriously contemplating something perhaps insignificant, yet potentially life-altering. He wanted to give up the regular college entrance exam and take the art school entrance exam instead. Michael Thompson could imagine how strongly his parents would object if he told them. Even his various aunts and uncles, like Aunt Maggie, would likely take turns trying to change his mind. Because Michael Thompson's academic performance was excellent. While getting into an Ivy League university might be a stretch, acceptance into a good university was practically guaranteed. With a bit more effort, even Yangzhou University, ranked third in the country, was within reach. The Thompson family's biggest regret was never having produced a scholar. The average education level in the Thompson family was junior high. Michael Thompson would be the first Thompson to go to university. If he could get into a prestigious university, it would be a tremendous honor for the family. Family honor. At this crucial juncture, for Michael Thompson to suddenly say he wasn't taking the regular exam and wanted to pursue the arts exam instead, one could only imagine the family's opposition. It wasn't that the Thompsons had anything against the arts exam itself, but in the perception of most people in Pine Ridge County, the arts track was a path for students with poor grades who still wanted to get into university. Even the teachers at school thought this way. They would try to persuade students with lower grades, who weren't guaranteed a spot in an undergraduate program, to take the arts exam, thus ensuring the school's university acceptance rate. Conversely, among the high-achieving students, historically, none had ever opted for the arts exam, at least not at Oakwood High School. But Michael Thompson had made up his mind. He was going for the arts exam. Before his rebirth, Michael Thompson had performed poorly on the Gaokao. He hadn't even come close to his unspoken goal of Yangzhou University, let alone getting into any of the universities he'd aimed for, and ended up in a regular university. And because his score had barely scraped past the admission cutoff, he was assigned to a major notorious for being in the top 10 hardest majors for employment nationwide. It was the kind of major where you had no prospects without pursuing graduate studies, a field with a supposed future, but no present, where bachelor's degree graduates from regular universities earned less than those with associate's degrees. However, that university and major did have one advantage: free time. This gave him enough time and energy to work on his own ventures. And that was the beginning of Michael Thompson's journey to wealth. Perhaps due to his family background, Michael Thompson had a natural talent for painting, and he was also hardworking and eager to learn. By his sophomore year of college, he was already skilled enough to take commissions online from game companies and private clients, earning some spending money. In the second half of his sophomore year, thanks to his youngest uncle, he started an eBay store for clothing, taught himself fashion design, and even launched his own brand. The eBay store took off immediately. His brand gained recognition. The business grew larger and larger, and soon he opened brick-and-mortar boutiques of various sizes. Later, he expanded into high-end luxury goods, focusing on apparel and jewelry. The products he personally designed became famous both at home and abroad. He was the businessman with the keenest eye for art, and the artist with the sharpest mind for business. Now, reborn in this life, he didn't want to chase money just for the sake of it. He wanted to do something purely for himself, something he truly loved. That's why he decided to take the art school entrance exams, to study what he genuinely wanted to learn, to actually gain knowledge in college instead of just coasting by for a bachelor's degree and diploma. Just as Michael Thompson made up his mind, a mechanical voice suddenly echoed in his ears. Host wish detected. System properties altering. Rebooting. System reboot successful. System initializing. Initialization complete. Successfully bound to host. Host information compiling. Compilation complete. Welcome to the Extraordinary Artist System V1. 0. This is a brand new version you ain't never played before. Just try it for 3 minutes, and you'll fall in love with this system, just like me. The expression on Michael Thompson's face froze. He thought he must be hearing things. It had started as a cool, synthesized electronic voice, but what the hell was with that sudden switch to a cheesy game ad voice? At the same time, Michael Thompson noticed the system loading. Text in the upper right corner of his vision disappeared. In its place was a small button. After focusing his gaze on the button for just a moment, a virtual screen appeared before Michael Thompson's eyes. Host, Michael Thompson. Age, 17. Skills, appraisal. Allows you to obtain partial information about items. Dexterous hands. Your hands are exceptionally nimble, capable of fine work beyond ordinary people. Stability. Your muscles are unique and do not tremble from fatigue or soreness. Title, none. Title bonus, none. Achievements, none. Learning progress, none yet. This system is pretty simple, but what does it actually do? Michael Thompson mulled it over for a long time, but couldn't figure it out. He did, however, experiment with the 3 skills he possessed. He found that the latter 2 seemed to be passive skills that couldn't be activated manually, while the first one, appraisal, could be. When he tried activating the first skill, his gaze fell upon the main gate. A somewhat old wooden gate. Michael Thompson stared intently, and the information in the pop-up box before his eyes gradually changed, becoming more detailed. A 38-year-old wooden gate made of pine, 7 feet high, 3 feet wide. Wait. Before Michael Thompson could read all the information, his eyes began to sting and water uncontrollably. He lowered his head and rubbed his eyes. When he opened them again, the item information box was gone from his vision. While Michael Thompson was still dazed, a little boy about 7 or 8 years old with a bowl cut ran in excitedly, clutching a smoldering stick. He yelled to Michael Thompson, "Big bro, come warm up by the fire." Michael Thompson felt a sense of relief and stood up with a smile. "Okay, coming." Every year when the weather turned cold, the Thompson family loved gathering in the yard to warm themselves by the fire. The adults would circle the brazier, eating edamame, drinking bourbon, and chatting about everyday things. Emily Thompson was leading her younger siblings and poking around in the brazier, tossing in sweet potatoes and chestnuts to roast. His little cousin, his second uncle's daughter, had picked a stick with glowing embers from the brazier and was running back and forth across the yard, waving it around with happy shouts. "Playing with fire means you'll wet the bed tonight," his aunt teased. The little girl immediately ran over, grabbed Michael Thompson's leg, and said in a tiny voice, "Then I'll sleep with Big Bro." "So you don't want my bed, huh? You really are your big brother's little sweetheart." Michael Thompson bent down and playfully pinched his cousin's chubby cheek. He was holding a chicken leg he'd just taken down from the bamboo pole in the yard. He called out, "All right, kids, who wants a roasted chicken leg?" Me. His younger cousins from his third uncle's family were the most enthusiastic, raising their hands and shouting happily. "That smoked meat hasn't even been drying for 2 days, and you're already wasting it. We're saving that for Christmas." Margaret Thompson scolded Michael Thompson. He just grinned sheepishly without replying, skewering the chicken leg onto a stick. Christmas was next month, and the Thompson family had started air-drying their smoked meats early: chicken legs, ducks, pork belly, and the like. After being cured and dried for a few days, they were stored in the freezer, enough to last well into the new year. This was something Michael Thompson ate every year. But the thing the Thompson kids looked forward to most during the holidays was the roasted turkey. They'd start curing it a month before the holidays. Come a day of the big holiday feast, they'd share some with the church first, then bring the rest home to cook. Once it was ready, they'd set up a table in the yard and place the turkey on it. A small knife will be placed beside it, and anyone who wanted some could just carve off a few slices and eat it right there with their hands. Pure bliss. Honestly, the taste might not have compared to the exotic delicacies he'd eaten later in life, but the joyful atmosphere of the whole family sharing the meal together cemented that flavor in his memory forever. Michael Thompson savored this feeling. Heaven had given him a second chance, and surely it wasn't just so he could add a few more zeros to his bank account. As he roasted the chicken leg, 2 little boys squatted by the brazier next to him, their eyes glued to the meat, practically drooling. Suddenly, Michael Thompson noticed his youngest uncle exchanging meaningful glances with his second uncle. He knew that the big event that would change the family's destiny was probably about to happen. Before Michael Thompson went to college, 2 major events occurred that would shape the Thompson family's destiny. These 2 events were also causally linked. Thinking back, the Thompson family's first crisis was about to happen soon. Before his rebirth, during his senior year of high school, his uncle Ben Thompson had secretly taken a large sum of money behind his wife's back and poured it into the stock market. He caught the bull market and made a killing. Originally in the wholesale clothing business, he now had so much money he was planning to build his own clothing factory in the neighboring city. Later, He even roped his second uncle into it, and his eldest uncle invested a bit too. The final outcome was predictable. At the end of January 2008, the global stock market crashed. The 21st was dubbed Black Monday as the entire market began to collapse, plummeting dramatically. His uncles ended up deep in debt. The eldest uncle was luckier, only losing some money. His second uncle had to sell his house in the city. And Uncle Ben Thompson, who had invested the most, would have had to mortgage the clothing factory if his brothers hadn't helped out. The whole family might have ended up homeless. Only Michael Thompson's father, Robert Thompson, remained steadfastly uninvolved. It wasn't that Robert Thompson didn't want to make money. It was mainly that the family finances weren't his to manage. Margaret Thompson, his wife, had the typical mindset of a cautious rural woman, content with modest security. She never trusted things like stocks, always feeling they were too intangible and risky. Michael knew that before he was even born, Margaret didn't even trust banks, secretly hiding any money they earned in cracks in the wall until rats chewed up several thousand yuan. Only then did she learn to deposit it in a bank. This was also a major reason the Thompson family later missed a significant opportunity to get rich, because their capital had been used up. Now that he was reborn, Michael naturally couldn't just stand by and watch his uncles walk into this disaster. Although his uncles treated him like their own kid, if he tried to persuade Uncle Ben to pull out now, with the stock market booming, Uncle Ben definitely wouldn't listen. Michael thought for a moment and came up with an idea. He shuffled over to a woman holding a child, lowered his voice, and said conspiratorially, "Auntie, let me tell you something." That night, Michael Thompson was sleeping soundly in his room when he was suddenly awakened by a loud crash from upstairs. He pricked up his ears and faintly heard his aunt yelling, "Ben, you tell me straight. Where did the family money go? Did you gamble it away?" "Ouch. No, really no. How could I gamble it away? I used it for business, that shipment for the factory." "Cut the crap. Who keeps the factory books, don't you know? Are you going to tell me the truth or not? Do you even want this marriage to work? Honey, hey, let's talk calmly, don't get physical." Michael listened long enough to enjoy the commotion, chuckled softly, rolled over in bed, closed his eyes, and went back to sleep. Judging by how thoroughly his aunt had Uncle Ben wrapped around her finger, he figured Uncle Ben would confess soon enough. His aunt was a typical rural woman who hadn't had much schooling. She had no concept of what the stock market even was. As long as Michael made her see that stocks were basically the same as gambling, she'd have plenty of ways to handle Uncle Ben. Tomorrow, he'd go over and fan the flames a bit more, maybe make up a few stories about people going bankrupt and jumping off buildings because of the stock market, and that would settle the matter. As for the other two uncles, he didn't need to worry. The women in the Thompson family always kept each other informed. The next day, Saturday, Michael Thompson slept comfortably until past 10, only getting up to wash after Margaret Thompson dragged him out of bed by the ear. He cleaned himself up nicely today. Although still a bit boyish, he was quite good-looking. After getting ready, Michael saw Margaret Thompson mopping the living room floor. He hesitated, deciding not to reveal his decision to apply to art school just yet, because today he also had to meet Olivia Sullivan, and if he broke the news now, he wouldn't be allowed out of the house today. Michael decided to see Olivia Sullivan first and deal with his parents when he got back. He went out into the yard and slipped over to Robert Thompson's side. "Dad, your buddy here's in a bit of jam. Help me out." Robert Thompson was sitting on a small stool in the yard, mending a fishing net. He turned his head and saw his son holding his right thumb and index finger together with a rubber band. "What's this?" "Short on cash." "Go ask your mom. Why are you always trying to fleece me? Don't you know who handles the money in this house?" Michael protested, "Dad, that's not right. Just yesterday you said you'd provide financial support for me." Robert tapped him on the head. "Stop messing around. What do you need money for? Gonna bring me back a pretty daughter-in-law. Wow, you psychic or something?" Michael slicked back his hair, raised an eyebrow, and gave a cocky look. "Don't you think your son looks extra handsome today? Won't girls be chasing me down the street?" "How much do you need?" Robert decided to pay for some peace and quiet. "Look, thousands wouldn't be too much, and hundreds wouldn't be too little. Just give whatever you think is right. It's about our bond, you know? You wouldn't want to seem cheap." Michael waved his hand nonchalantly, but his eyes were glued to Robert slowly reaching for his wallet. Finally, Robert pulled a single $100 bill from his wallet. "Just 100. TSK. Our bond is only worth $100. Take it or leave it." "No, no, no. 100's fine, 100's fine." Michael quickly snatched the bill and happily stuffed it into his pocket. He stood up and said to Robert, "Dad, tell Mom I won't be home for lunch. I'm heading out. Oh, and this." Michael pulled out a stack of masks he'd prepared earlier from his pocket. "Take these. You need to wear them when you're working from now on, understand? Breathing in all that stone dust isn't good for you. It just builds up in your lungs. And cut back on the smoking, too. I hear you coughing every single morning. You nag worse than your mother. I'm being serious. Don't joke around. Michael shoved the masks into Robert's hand without waiting for an argument. I've had more schooling than you, so you have to listen to me on this, okay? Robert was both annoyed and amused, but he knew his son was worried about his health, so he took the